And welcome all to the last session of the WA Mining Conference, day 2. We've had a really very exciting couple of days, and certainly looking forward to the last 2 sessions as probably the diamonds in terms of quality and interest. I am really pleased to have Adam Seedsman, the Acting Deputy Head of Australian Space Agency, and he will be presenting the topic of the mining and space connection, application and opportunities. For me, in terms of the previous roles that I've had, the Space Agency was a hugely important element of the Australian innovation policy, not so much so that the importance of GPS systems, the importance of satellites, and the importance of technology between Earth and satellite, and how that can be leveraged across innovation and how that can be leveraged across the mining industry is providing Australia a potential comparative advantage, and it's really important for us as an innovation ecosystem to leverage that capability. And so I was really keen to have the Australian Space Agency present to the sector and highlight to the broader community the opportunities that are available. So Adam's with us. He's the AG Deputy Head of the Australian Space Agency. His usual role as Executive Director of Strategy and Policy at the agency, Adam has the responsibility for civil space policy matters in the agency, as well as the development and implementation of the agency's investment plan and the strategy to grow and transform Australia's space industry. Adam has been at the agency since its inception in July 2018. And I could talk for another 15 minutes about all the great things that Adam does, but I think we all want to hear from the man. So over to you.
Thanks so much for the kind introduction, Rick. It's a real honour to be here presenting to the conference. Mining is and resource sector is just one of the areas that have got such a great opportunity to take advantage of space. But look, my name's Adam Seedsman, and as Rick said, I'm the acting deputy head of the Space Agency at the moment. Unfortunately, Anthony Murfitt, who is usually in this seat, is unable to join us today, as much as he very much wanted to be. I'm going to talk about how space is transforming and how it's becoming more and more relevant across the broader economy, but also how it's changing from being a government-led and driven activity to something which is commercially driven and is adding value across the economy. But I think it's important to have a look at the background, consider where we've come from, and actually have a look at the things that the government is doing today in terms of investing in space. We're not a new player. We've been involved in the space and space activities internationally since 1958, when we were supporting European and UK and American rocket launches from Woomera in South Australia. We established our first formal relationship with NASA in the 1960s, and we became host to the largest number of NASA tracking stations outside the United States. We still do that sort of function today with the Canberra Deep Space Communication Complex, which is just over the hill from where I'm sitting here, and it's an essential part of NASA's Deep Space Network. When Apollo 11 made its first successful landing on the moon, we were front and centre with that and essential in broadcasting one giant leap to the world. Today, our collaboration with NASA includes agreements with us, the Space Agency, Geoscience Australia, CSIRO, and even Australian Antarctic Division. And it's a collaboration that extends to all states and territories, supporting areas like vehicle tracking, robotics, automation, and optical communication. But that's not the whole story. That's very much the background. It really is changing. And while we're still waiting for sort of updated figures, I think it's important to recognise that that the space sector worldwide is worth $350 billion, which is massive, and some projections put it to be worth $1.1 trillion over the next 30 years, or 20 years rather. In Australia, we know that we generate about $12 billion worth of revenue in the civil space sector, and I'm not really talking about defence applications for space here. This is just civil businesses, and I guess. Recognising this, the government really understands that actually we need space for weather forecasting, and as Rick said, for things like GPS, which underpins stuff like our online banking and our internet access. There's applications for Earth observation, both in the resources sector, for autonomous mining vehicles, emergency management. Farmers use information to manage the health of their crops, and so the commercial space sector is experiencing a rapid growth, and largely due to the evolving nature of technologies that we enjoy here on Earth. So technology is smaller, innovation cycles are shorter, and the cost to access space is so much lower than they used to be. And space is everywhere. And so it's within this context that the government decided to prioritise that and establish the Australian Space Agency on the 1st of July. We're a little different to other space agencies. Everybody thinks of NASA, who primarily has a research basis, but you can see our purpose there on the screen. We're established to transform a globally respected space industry that lifts the broader economy and inspires and improves the lives of Australians, underpinned by strong national and international engagement. And the government's given us a clear goal. It's to triple the size of the sector. And that's no mean feat, and add 20,000 jobs by 2030. So we're doing that by being the front door for Australia's engagement on civil space and ensuring that our space activities contribute to economy-wide productivity and employment, as well as advancement in knowledge and our national capabilities. One of the first things we did was work to establish the vision for this, and the government's released the Australian Civil Space Strategy, which sets the vision for 2019 to 28. It provides industry with long-term certainty and long-term framework around which to plan activities, and that's something we've not necessarily had before in this country. Excuse me. The strategy not just sets out our purpose and how we're going to do it, and I mentioned international engagement, increasing our national capability, but also about being a responsible global citizen in space and on Earth, and how we're going to inspire the next generation of Australians in space. Importantly, the government's agreed 7 priority areas: Earth observation, communications, which of course, you know, for remote areas, satellite communications absolutely critical, including further advanced communications, optical communications between Earth and the Moon, and that'll also help, and those kinds of capabilities will improve remote connectivity across the country. Robotics and automation. I think for this audience, I don't need to talk about that too much. We're a world leader in remote asset management and industries associated with that: mining, oil, gas, transportation, agriculture, and fisheries. And we can leverage that experience in space. It's something that NASA's talking to us about now. We can add value in this sector. It's a key priority area, and I'm actually going to talk about this the most. And you can see the other priorities listed on the page. The government's investing in space. It's around, since 2018, they've committed close to $700 million, and you can see some of those investments listed there, and I'll talk a little bit about some of those. The front and centre, we've got the Space Infrastructure Fund, $19.5 million to build Australian industry capability, and that program's about addressing gaps that we know exist in the sector. So while Australia's had a deep space history, we haven't developed in the same way that some other countries have. So we're investing now to create new capabilities. The Moon to Mars initiative, $150 million over 5 years. We're helping Australian businesses and researchers get out there and support NASA's mission to go to the Moon and then go on to Mars. You can see some of the investments there on the screen. We've got actually, next slide would be a better one. 2 investments right here in Western Australia in the context of this conference. West Australia is very important to the future of space for our nation, and there's strong business capabilities and development for space-derived applications. The greatest potential for economic jobs growth and competitive advantages lie in agriculture, mining, offshore oil and gas, and remote operations and robotics. WA's got a significant space infrastructure, including the Square Kilometre Array out at Murchison, the European Space Agency's Deep Space Communications Centre in New Norcia, the Perth International Telecommunications Complex, the WA Space Centre and Learmont Solar Observatory. And the 2 pictured here are 2 of the projects that we're funding through the Space Infrastructure Fund I mentioned earlier. We've got the new Robotics Command and Control Centre in Perth. It's called the Spark, and that's a grant that's been given to Fugro Marine Australia, a company that'll be familiar to many here today. And also the Space Data Analytics Facility out of the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre, which is going to make space data more accessible, particularly for small to medium enterprises. The Robotics AI and Command and Control Centre was a $4.5 million grant to Fugro Marine. And it's just one of the ways we're investing in the space sector to support creation of high-tech jobs here in Australia. The Moon to Mars initiative is our Our Moon to Mars initiative is our flagship initiative, and we're working with NASA on its inspiring plans to travel to the Moon and onto Mars. The initiative is a $150 million program to fuel the growth of Australian businesses so they can succeed in national and international space supply chains. We'll support NASA on its ambitious Moon to Mars endeavours. As a whole, the initiative will accelerate the growth of the Australian space sector by providing opportunities to enter supply chains, increase demand for new capabilities, create inspiration, and enable spin-out technologies for economic growth. We're doing this through 3 initiatives. The supply chain program will help getting Australian products and services into national and international space supply chains, and the capability improvement grants are open now. This program can be used to support resources companies looking to diversify into the space sector by, for example, supporting companies to develop the quality standards required for products for the use in space. The demonstrator program is the next one. This is about developing and launching products to build capability and space heritage in Australian businesses and researchers. And we've just recently opened the feasibility grants program associated with that. What this means for the audience here today is this program could help provide an opportunity to pilot a technology developed in the resources sector and show how it can be used in space. For example, autonomous operations and resource recovery. The Trailblazer program will be our major project supporting the Moon to Mars initiative that will demonstrate our strengths, ingenuity, and inspires the nation. That program is going to launch in 2022, but we're going to be consulting on that in the new year. So if you've got something to say or if you've got an idea, we'd love to hear from you. And there'll be announcements about that consultation when it starts. Potential opportunities could include autonomous systems, next generation communication and components on a lunar probe or vehicle. With many of these technologies, they're also used in the resources sector. This technology in space will also support further advancement of automation in the Australian resources sector. And we're not just looking at space businesses. We're looking at those kinds of businesses that have got a capability that can spill into the space sector. So space businesses is obviously our core. Manufacturing, so those businesses that are doing precision manufacturing, high quality manufacturing, lightweight, durable, advanced manufacturing type capabilities. And that lines up very strongly with the recently announced modern manufacturing initiative from the government as part of the COVID-19 recovery. Of course, resources sector, defence industries, and health sector. Space medicine, we've got an enormous expertise here in Australia. Now I'd like to talk about some of the future opportunities, and this is more about the links and how the mining and space connection is going to come together. To live and work in deep space for months or even years may mean humans have less immediate access to life-sustaining elements and critical supplies readily available on Earth. The solar system has a vast amount of resources that can vary according to the destination. Across Moon and Mars, the common denominator for all destinations is water. Water from space has the capacity to be used for drinking, hygiene, producing breathable air, plant growth, and radiation shielding. Water can be used as a propellant in the form of hydrogen and oxygen and electrolyzed from water using solar energy. NASA's Lunar Surface Innovation Initiative to support NASA's Artemis exploration program will develop and demonstrate technologies to use the Moon's resources to produce water, fuel, and other supplies, as well as capabilities to excavate and construct structures on the Moon. And as previously mentioned, a Moon to Mars initiative is also about fostering the development of technologies that we use on Earth, such as those for mining purposes, so that we can apply this for future exploration in space. Our advantage in the mining sector could be very complementary from a resource extraction perspective too. And the Moon to Mars initiative opens the opportunities that could potentially draw on skills of Australia's mining and resource sector, particularly in ISRU, or in situ resource utilisation. It's the practice of sourcing and using materials found on celestial objects such as the Moon, Mars and asteroids to replace those that would otherwise be brought from Earth for space, habitation or exploration. The evolving nature of human space exploration will make ISRU a key priority, with longer journeys making crews more independent of Earth and more reliant on resources in space. Israel will see the development of technologies that use astronomical sources to produce life-sustaining and critical supplies. Off-Earth mining is one Israeli method to extract minerals and resources and return economic benefits too. At the moment, economic value is returned to Earth purely from those activities that can be delivered from orbit. We already know about position navigation and timing, Earth observation, and space situational awareness as some of the priorities that we care about. But how we create value in space and return that to Earth will be key for the growth of the space economy in the future. Australia's remote operations capabilities have huge potential for the future of space exploration, particularly with consideration to how abundant the moon is with life-sustaining resources that can support longer scientific exploration. The Australian Civil Space Strategy outlines 7 national civil space priority areas that I mentioned before to transform and grow Australia's space industry. One of the priority areas is robotics and automation. And Australia is a world leader in remote asset management across mining, oil and gas transport, agriculture and fisheries. We can leverage this expertise in robotics and technology and systems for exploration in space. Such systems are becoming more accessible with lowering cost for access to space. If we look at the downstream applications, by that we mean from space to Earth, satellite Internet of Things technology is a relatively new application that can provide real benefits to the mining and resources sector. The installed base of satellite IoT connections will massively increase in the coming years. It's expected to expand at about 25% compound annual growth rate from 2.7 million units in 2019 to reach 10.3 million units by 2025, as reported in the Omdia Satellite IoT Media Market Report in 2020. Market revenue will more than double during the same period, with the global satellite IoT connectivity business swelling to $544 million in 2025, up from $233 million last year. And I'd like to talk about some of the things that are being done here in Australia. Some of you may know that Woodside Petroleum and NASA have a collaboration. Perth-based Woodside have been loaned a NASA-developed Robonaut for just over 4 years to explore how technology could be used to improve safety, reliability and efficiency in high-risk remote environments. Woodside are combining its advanced cognitive science technology being developed at its WA facilities and combine this with NASA's expertise in robotics and Robonauts, which are already used at the International Space Station. Woodside are researching the ways that Robonaut could perform tasks from more than 300 ideas suggested by the company's operators, engineers and maintenance workers. The research will provide insights from the resource sector to uncover new ways to apply Robonauts in extreme remote environments such as space for exploration and scientific purposes. Another example on the middle of the screen is Fleet Space. It's an Australian startup it's hugely exciting. Their large array wireless sensing project, which is a collaboration with Oz Minerals, University of Adelaide and the University of Melbourne, will remotely map terrestrial heat flow and present a new approach to minerals exploration beneath cover. Fleet will work with universities to develop new needle-shaped heat sensors, which are no larger than a bottle of hand sanitizer, and they'll be implemented in an array over 10-kilometre intervals with minimal environmental disruption. While this project is almost completely Adelaide-based, this technology is applicable worldwide, and large arrays of wireless sensors will project data on the geophysical characteristics of land to inform the viability of potential mining sites for Oz Minerals. I think I've had a couple of comments pop up there, so is my screen share not working? Can I get, Rick, can I get some feedback on that? No, working fine. Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'll press on. I just had the notification on that. Going on, I was talking about Fleet and Oz Minerals, and where there's a worldwide crisis in minerals exploration, its effects are acute in Australia, where 80% of the continent is undercover and new discoveries are more difficult. If exploration performance cannot be improved, Australia will be forced to rely on old and higher cost deposits and become increasingly uncompetitive. Oz Minerals has been investigating new exploration techniques using machine learning and new data capture methods to accelerate discoveries. Now, with the addition of nanosatellite IoT connectivity from Fleet Space and research from University of Adelaide, huge amounts of new data can be used to efficiently explore deeper undercover in Australia's most remote regions. For the screen, I'm really pleased to be able to talk about the Australian Remote Operations for Space and Earth, AROSE, So recently established Virtual Institute to unify Australia's unique capabilities in the space sector and terrestrial remote operations. It's a national space robotics entry, which will create an estimated 1,500 jobs and contribute up to $200 million to the economy and bring significant value to the resources sector. Arosa's founding partners include Woodside Energy, Rio Tinto, Fugro, and Nova Systems, and consists of consists of a group of 26 different organisations across Australia. Arose will help position Australia, and Western Australia in particular, to play vital roles in NASA's future Moon to Mars missions by developing new technologies to assist in space exploration. They're about driving knowledge exchange across sectors from space to ground and ground to space through collaboration projects that combine remote operations with other areas like AI and machine learning. They're building and advocating national capability and developing the future workforce to expand more operations, remote operations, to position Australia as a future hub and a leader of remote operations technology solutions in space. That brings us to the end. We've got an exciting future ahead of us and one that will continue to inspire the nation. And personally, I'm really looking forward to the ways that the resources sector and other sectors will begin to work more closely with space. And we already know that space adds huge value to the way that we conduct activities on Earth, but there's more to come. And I just find that incredibly exciting.
Adam, it is extremely exciting. And I'm very pleased to see the progression and the additional funding that the Australian government has put behind what is a really foundational capability for the country, and that not only supports current industry where we do have a comparative advantage, but it's creating a pathway for developing of new technologies and new industries in support of space. So thank you very much for your presentation. For me, I guess a key question that emerges is the ongoing conversation that we have on the innovation ecosystem about creating that leverage of capability across emerging companies and startups, right? The key here is who is closest to the problem, and then in recognizing that there's an innovation to be had, how do you leverage that emerging capability, be it in robotics and the number of robotic clusters that are emerging like Sue, or be it in space? So how can emerging companies engage with the space agency or the clusters that are emerging? What would be your recommendation?
Look, Rick, that's a great question. There's actually quite a few different ways, and it really depends on the structure of the organisation and the kinds of things that they're interested in doing. Firstly, it's about reaching out, being part of organisations like the Space Industry Association of Australia. They're a great advocate for businesses that want to enter the sector and to try and add value. The second thing is to engage with institutes like Arose, and also to engage in, I mentioned the Robotics Command and Control, the Spark Centre, which is being established by Fugro Marine Australia. That's intended to be infrastructure for the entire sector. So it'll create, that's a great example because it'll be a centre of excellence for the application, the use of robotics, automation, AI, machine learning in a remote operations context. So, you know, for example, if you're into remote operations and you're applying that in your resource sector business, that's actually something that we can, or that the Spark will be able to help with. Another thing is also to think about how you can use space data and space-derived data across your business, and the Space Data Analysis Centre that's being launched with the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre at the moment. That's going to again create a centre of expertise where you'll be able to work with other like-minded colleagues, access academia, access the capability and capacity that exists in the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre, and work out how you can apply that to your business and add value.
Well, that's a very comprehensive response, as was your presentation, Adam. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for sharing a great presentation. Give my regards to Anthony, and I hope to speak to you soon.
I certainly shall. All right, thanks very much, Rick.